God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Don't ouvre les portes. Let the doors be open. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The Honourable Member for Fredericton.
Mr. Speaker, on February 24th, Fredericton lost one of its precious lights. Lexi, at 16, was active, curious, and kind. Her smile and her quick sense of humor were able to brighten any room she walked into. Derived from Greek, Lexi means the one who protects humanity. And Lexi, together with your family and our community, we will ensure that your legacy does just that, keeps us safe. We will continue to talk about you and everything that made you the person you are. We will continue to talk about the mental health services other young people so desperately need. We will not accept the status quo, that we are living in a society where we turn away youth in their moment of greatest need. Lexi, we lost your light on this earth. Now we have a guiding star. May it remind us to listen and support every spark so that they may not fade out, that no darkness may overtake them. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Whitby.
What?
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Victim Services of Durham Region for the critical role they play in Whitby and across Durham Region in addressing human trafficking. Their efforts are focused on prevention and providing support for victims. We know that 90% of human trafficking victims in Durham Region are women and girls, and 51% of survivors are Indigenous females. Every year, Victim Services of Durham Region raises awareness by giving hundreds of presentations at schools across the region. Over 50% of the presentations result in reported cases of human trafficking. They also work with families to educate parents to make them better able to recognize the signs of human trafficking. And last year, That's SUS, a collaborative project between Victim Services of Durham Region and partners, received $330,000 in federal funding for an online tool to raise awareness of human trafficking among at-risk youth. I'm proud to say these funds were made possible by our government's national strategy to combat human trafficking. We must do all we can to eradicate human trafficking, and I want to say a heartfelt thank you to Victim Services of Durham Region for their dedication and leadership toward realizing that vision. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon University.
Mr. Speaker, nuclear is the future, and it goes beyond party lines. We're talking about the lowest greenhouse gas emitting, one of the most affordable and most scalable, and frankly, safest forms of energy out there. If you aren't serious about nuclear, you're not serious about the economy or the environment. Canada has been a pioneer in nuclear energy since the beginning. We were actually, in fact, the second country in the world to produce nuclear energy. And one of the most promising forms of nuclear innovation is small modular reactors, or SMRs. And if you aren't familiar with them, don't worry, you're going to hear a whole lot more about them in the years to come. These aren't your traditional reactors. They are of incredible value for remote communities and small communities throughout Canada. And they allow them to meet their energy needs of the 21st century. And I trust all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to hopefully support SMRs and recognize their value. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Monsieur le Président, today I speak about generosity, kindness, and advocacy to honor the passionate spirit of Madeleine Montezano. Madeleine was not afraid of hard work or sacrifice. As a young French-Canadian nurse, she welcomed challenges as they came. Her motto was, let's do what we have to do and can do. When we can't, let's find those who can and allow them to assume the responsibility so that we can all share the benefits. God's been good to us. From parish involvement to active participation in democratic institutions, from cultural events to charitable organizations, Madeleine was unlimited in her passion and very generous in her philanthropic contributions to the community. Mr. Speaker, when we care for someone deeply, their spirit lives forever in our hearts. On behalf of her beloved husband, Danny Montezano, and my colleagues, the members from Humber River Black Creek, King Vaughan, Eglinton Lawrence, and all who had the indelible pleasure of knowing Madeleine, your legacy continues through all you touched. Reposa in pace. Rest in peace, Madeleine. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable.
The honourable member for Abitibi Bay James Nunavik U. Mr. Speaker, I invite the people of Val-d'Or and surrounding regions to take part this week in the 21st century to eliminate racial discrimination. This week's theme is Together United Against Racism. This year, of course, COVID-19 has forced community partners to replace the very popular Gabriel Cometa Walk, which is a solidarity walk of 1.5 kilometers long, with activities that respect the health measures. There were 2 banners that can be signed at the Val-d'Or City Hall and the other in the entrance hall of the Marcel Multicultural Center. We must be aware of the reality of racial discrimination. While there is no respite from racism, as we have seen from the news in recent months, the fight against racial discrimination continues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
De Sherbrooke.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The honourable member for Sherbrooke. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During this Made in Canada week, I had the opportunity to meet with different companies in Sherbrooke who have helped to fight COVID-19. Today, I would like to pay tribute to their efforts. In particular, MI Integration, which provided some 15 hospitals in Quebec with N95 masks as the demand has continued to grow. I think also of SOS Odors, E2 Metrics, and Laboratory M2 for manufacturing disinfectants and antiseptic cleaners. Big thank you to American Built Right for their services in providing medical supplies such as antibacterial carpets for hospitals. I cannot forget Immune Biosolution, which provided significant support to Canadian research in order to develop treatment against COVID-19 and its variants. I am proud to represent the city of Sherbrooke, which had a real hand in responding to our social and health needs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We should always focus on national unity in this House. One of the biggest divides in Canada is between urban and rural areas. Rural Canadians are part of Team Canada, but too often they are picked last and get sidelined. It's more than just slow internet and cell service. The Liberal plan for a clean fuel standard is exactly the opposite of a Team Canada approach. It's nothing but a penalty. The government's own review of regulation openly states that it will disproportionately impact vulnerable people with low incomes. It also says rural areas, especially in the Atlantic provinces, along with those of us out west, will suffer from higher fuel and production costs. Heating costs are already going up, but now our workforce and job opportunities will be left out in the cold. Rinks and rural facilities at the heart of our towns and villages will take yet another hit. Rural Canada, with its people and its communities, shouldn't be punished for their way of life, even if this Liberal government doesn't understand it. These great Canadians, as much as any other, deserve a lot better from this government.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Labrador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today marks World Tuberculosis Day and a day to draw awareness about the effects of TB, a disease with significant health, social, and economic consequences. This year's theme is The Clock is Ticking, and TB is an urgent matter. In 2019, there were 1.4 million TB-related deaths around the world, and the incidence of tuberculosis in Inuit Nanangat is more than 300 times higher than that in non-Indigenous Canadian-born populations. That's why we are actively working in partnership with Inuit Tapestry Kanatami across all 4 Inuit regions, investing more than $27 million to reduce and eradicate this disease by 2030. We know that through rapid diagnostics and better tests, we are treating active TB sooner, and we're preventing transmission to families and communities. I asked my colleagues today to raise the awareness to end the stigma and discrimination associated with tuberculosis. It is time for a Canada and a world without TB, and I ask that we all work together to end this epidemic. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, I had the pleasure of hosting a job fair in my riding focused specifically for people with autism organized by Substance Cares. This event was not only the first of its kind in Canada, but in the world. As we enter Autism Acceptance and Awareness Month in April, I would like to highlight the reason for this initiative and its success. Autism spectrum disorder currently affects 1 in 60 children nationally and has an 80% unemployment rate. Services and opportunities are limited, if not non-existent, for autistic people once they finish high school. In just 5 years, this event has attracted some of Canada's top employers and has garnered international media attention. Prior to COVID, Substance Cares had expanded its job fair into Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver. This year, this initiative will be held virtually on April 8th and open to every province and territory in Canada. I would like to applaud the co-founders and organizers from Substance Cares for their determination in trying to bring about change through the Spectrum Works Career Fair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Mill Woods.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are frustrated with the Liberals' failure to manage this pandemic. The Prime Minister's failures on rapid tests and vaccines have had an immeasurable impact on small businesses, our healthcare system, and Canadian families. Over the last year, we have seen a dramatic rise in mental health issues, addictions, and overdoses that has become a shadow pandemic. Things must change. The new normal is not okay. The Liberals can't keep asking Canadians to sacrifice more without being clear about when restrictions will be eased. That's why we are asking for a clear, data-driven plan to support gradually, safely, and permanently lifting COVID-19 restrictions. This Prime Minister has been slow on the border, on rapid tests, and behind the entire developed world on vaccines. The UK and the US already have data-driven plans for lifting restrictions and reopening the economy. Why not Canada?
Great. The Honourable Member for Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I want to bring attention to this House that COVID-19 is not a gender-neutral crisis. It has exposed an alarming rise in domestic and societal violence against women, especially ethnic, racial, and LGBTQ2+ minorities. Nowhere more so than on social media platforms. Nowhere more so than against women politicians and journalists. 41% of women MPs globally and 52% in Europe have been the target of abusive, sexual, or violent contact online, often threatening death, rape, or violence against their families. Online threats have real consequences, such as the assassination of UK MP Jo Cox in 2016. In 2019, this caused 18 women in the UK alone to quit as MPs or not run for Parliament. It is urgent that Parliament's information and communications-based technologies join together to eradicate online violence and ensure gender safety on the internet before it undermines democracy and good governance. The time to act is now.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Wetaskiwin.
April 2nd is World Autism Awareness Day, and 23 years since my son Jaden was diagnosed. Jaden often needs help to navigate the world around him. Let's face it, we all need help sometimes. But Jaden also has many things that the world needs right now. Surrounded by unrelenting noise, the world needs some quiet, and Jaden challenges us to slow down, to wait for his thoughts to find expression in their own time and form. When we just pause and tune into him, there is so much we can learn. The world needs grace. No matter what mistakes or poor choices I've made and will make, Jaden's love for me is almost impossibly pure and unconditional. The world needs encouragement, and rest assured, Jaden stands ready with an enthusiastic high five for quite literally everyone when we're able to come together again. Finally, the world needs gratitude. And I'm so thankful for the tens of millions of people around the world with autism whose unique abilities and perspectives will benefit all of us if we build societies that better include them.
The Honourable Member for Portage Lisgar.
On behalf of the people of Portage Lisgar, I rise to say it's time to have a plan to see an end to the lockdowns. A plan to give back to the people the God-given freedoms our country guarantees them. Freedom to visit family and friends. Freedom to worship together. Freedom to allow our children to play sports, and even freedom to plan a holiday. Freedom to talk and hug, laugh and play. It's time to reopen our economy and get our businesses and Canadians back to work. While other countries are making use of tools like rapid tests, vaccines and treatments, Canada is behind. The US and the UK have presented a plan to their citizens to safely reopen. The Liberal government here in Canada has no plan, and they refuse to provide any answers on a path forward. Conservatives have a plan to secure jobs, secure our mental health, and secure the future. It's time to end the lockdowns and get back to normal safely. And with Conservatives, Canadians will have a plan to do just that.
The Honourable Member for North Island Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, the name Rosalind Glynn is synonymous with the Hardy Bay Seniors. Recently elected as chair, again, I celebrate Rosalind's dedication and hard work for seniors. She is an inspiration. For example, at the end of 2020, Rosalind was a recipient of the Certificate of Appreciation from BC Premier John Horgan for the work the Society has done during COVID-19. The Society used grants from United Way to provide continuous food delivery to vulnerable seniors, offering more than 50 meals every 2 weeks. More recently, the Port Hardy Council unanimously nominated Rosalind for the Order of British Columbia. I also want to thank the amazing folks that are always there working with her, Chris, Donna, and Candy, just to name a few. And I also deeply appreciate the board, Dawn, Ev, Ann, Bud, and Pat. I have been a member of the Hardy Bay Senior Citizen Society for years, and I am so grateful for the amazing women who lead the way. Thank you, Rosalind, for your leadership and your activism.
The Honourable Member for Beloeil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The cultural and musical world has been rocked to its very foundation. Solange Doran, known as Solange generally, the General Director of ADISC, is leaving after 29 years. We experienced the golden age of the record albums in Quebec in the 90s and the early 2000s when I chaired ADISC. We also worked on the issues of pirating. I met there an extraordinary colleague. She was well appreciated, respected, and even feared, but above all loved by the arts and culture and communications sector. We see her resilience because she remained at the helm during a time of great change that this industry has gone through since then. I want to say that although some battles remain, the government should consider if it's going to give her a farewell gift. If so, it must do so before April 19th by respecting the promise to make the web giants pay their share for Quebec culture. So we will see you soon, Solange, somewhere else. Thank you.
For New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, the government last tabled a federal budget 2 years ago. That's 2 long years without a fiscal plan. We see the results. Canada has one of the highest unemployment rates in the G7 and record economic decline. On our side of the House, Conservatives have a plan to secure jobs and secure the future. We believe that every Canadian deserves the security of a well-paying job. That's why our top economic priority is to enact a jobs plan to get Canadians back to work. We will take immediate action to help the hardest hit sectors, helping those, especially women and young Canadians, who have suffered and lost the most. Rebuild Main Street by assisting small business and providing incentives to invest, rebuild, and start new businesses, and create opportunity for all Canadians across this country. We know Canadians' recovery will begin by helping working Canadians. The Liberals are unable to improve Canada's economic fortunes, but Canadians can count on Conservatives to secure jobs, secure the economy, and secure our future.
The Honourable Member for Brossard-Saint-Lambert. Mr. Speaker, today an event is being held to raise the awareness of parliamentarians to the terrible scourge of the global trade in wild animals.
That there would be no need to address the need to curb the global commercial trade in wild animals. but unfortunately, too much money is still being made on the suffering and slaughter of wild animals. As an animal lover and a strong supporter for animal rights, I believe Canada needs to play an active role in developing a global solution to the wildlife trade. C'est de notre responsabilité que
It's our responsibility to invest in an environment without cruelty, one that is sustainable for wild animals. I encourage us to commit in abolishing this trade.
They feel both pain and pleasure, and governments should take this into account in regulations governing their use and trade.
Canadians are concerned about the welfare of animals, and I'm convinced that the majority of parliamentarians will join us in urging the end of this terrible practice.
Questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Monsieur le Président, à cause de la pandémie.
Mr. Speaker, because of the pandemic, there is a crisis for mental health. There's also been a wave of domestic violence throughout the country, including Quebec. Yesterday, we saw the seventh woman beaten to death by her husband. Existing programs are not working. What needs to be done now to stop this violence? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for 50 years, the government has been trying to fight domestic violence, and we continue to do so with record investments in opportunities for women and initiatives against domestic violence. We've taken measures to restrict firearms, which do counter domestic violence. We've had an inquiry on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and we will continue to work with every member of this House to fight domestic violence and gender-based violence.
Le chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Minister's chief science advisor is warning against the government extending the second vaccine dose to 4 months. The scientists and physicians on the Prime Minister's immunization panel confirmed the only reason they are moving to 4 months is because the Liberal government has failed to secure vaccine supply. Will the Prime Minister admit he has a supply problem, not a science problem?
Minister.
We now have safe and effective vaccines available in Canada. We need to vaccinate as many Canadians as quickly as possible. To maximize resistance in Canada to COVID-19, NACI has recommended second doses can be safely delayed by up to 4 months. We will continue working with provinces and territories to ensure the communities are protected and that they're supported by science in the decisions that they make around spacing of vaccines.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Did the Prime Minister or his office task the National Security Advisor with investigating allegations of sexual misconduct against General Vance in 2018?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when the Ombudsperson came forward with allegations, the Minister quite rightly directed him to the Privy Council office to follow up on those investigations. We know that allegations of sexual misconduct need to be taken extremely seriously, need to be followed up on by appropriate authorities, not by politicians. That's something that Ray Novak emphasized in his appearance at committee. We will always take very seriously allegations of sexual assault. We will always stand up for the women and men who stepped forward while they serve.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Ray Novak consulted appropriate authorities. I have an email from the Prime Minister's former National Security Advisor saying that these serious allegations were never brought to his attention. He was the appropriate person that the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, should have raised these serious allegations to, but he was never told an investigation was needed. Why did the Prime Minister sit on serious allegations about sexual misconduct against the Chief of Defence Staff for 3 years?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when the Ombudsperson came forward to the Minister with allegations, the Minister quite rightly directed him towards the appropriate independent authorities. That is the role that politicians need to take. In my career as leader, as we have encountered allegations of sexual assault and harassment, we have always forwarded those to appropriate authorities for proper investigation. That is what needs to happen in this situation, in every situation. We know we need to continue to work to ensure that there are resources and recourse available for anyone who comes forward, and that we put an end to the culture that permits this.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Les Canadiennes méritent mieux.
Canadians deserve better. According to an email from the former advisor to national security for the Prime Minister, the allegations against General Vance were never brought to their attention. The person in the Prime Minister's office who's charged with opening an investigation was not aware of this situation. Why is the Prime Minister doing nothing about the situation for 3 years now? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, our government has always recognized that we must protect and offer resources to every man and woman who steps forward to make allegations. That's exactly what we've done here. The Minister of Defense directed the ombudsperson to authorities who had the ability to conduct an investigation independently and rigorously. We will always look to improve the process, because no woman who serves in our forces should be subject to this and not have any recourse. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A few days before crab fishing season opens, nearly 40% of the Cap-aux-Meules port is no longer accessible to fishers. This is a crisis, and the people of the Magdalen Islands are paying for it. We're listening for an answer that has a yes or no. Will the government make sure that there is immediate repairs to equipment or ensure financial compensation for the losses of fishers in the Magdalen Islands? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are very concerned to see the challenges that Cap-aux-Meules is facing in terms of its facilities. We're working with local authorities and looking at what we can do to ensure the safety of fishers and everyone who uses these facilities. Also, we want to make sure that we can move forward with fishing season. We know how important this is for people of the Magdalen Islands, and we'll do everything we can to support them as a government. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. I was waiting to hear a solution. Mauricie has been working a long time on a high-frequency train that would go from Quebec to Windsor. That was an election promise of the Liberals in 2015, renewed in 2019. Still nothing. I remember comparing it to the Sasquatch. It's a mirage in a desert of public transportation. Yes or no? For people in Mauricie, will the high-frequency train be in the budget? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I'm very pleased to be able to inform my honourable colleague that the budget will be tabled on April 19th, and he will have answers at that time. I wish to confirm that last week, or this week rather, when I was going through Trois-Rivières, I had an excellent conversation with the mayor of that town, and I highlighted our continued commitment and the dozens of millions of dollars that we've already invested in the high-frequency train. This is a project that the people of Trois-Rivières really care about. It also matters to all Quebecers and Canadians.
The Honourable Member, l'Honourable Député de Burnaby South.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During this pandemic, we saw the worst care conditions for our seniors in long-term care facilities that are for-profit. More infections, more deaths. In spite of all this evidence, the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the Bloc voted against our motion to remove profit from long-term care homes. Why is the Prime Minister choosing profit over the care of our seniors? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I understand, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable leader of the NDP started his career in a provincial legislature and is perhaps getting a little confused about where he is now. In Ottawa, this is the federal government, and we work in partnership with provinces, and we respect provincial jurisdictions. We all know that we have to work together to ensure better safety and dignity for our seniors, and we will continue to work with the provinces while respecting their jurisdictions.
Member for Burnaby South.
Real leadership is about finding solutions, not finding excuses. With this approach, we would have never have had universal health care in our country. It takes leadership. The proof is overwhelmingly clear. For-profit long-term care homes were the site of the worst conditions of care in this pandemic. We saw military go in and find that in for-profit long-term care homes, syringes were being reused. We saw expired medication used. Despite all the evidence, the Liberals, the Bloc, and the Conservatives voted against our motion to remove profit from long-term care. Why does the Prime Minister choose profits over care and the lives of our seniors?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can always respect someone who doesn't forget his roots, but I need to point out to the Honourable Leader of the NDP, he is no longer at Queen's Park. He is now in the federal House of Commons, where we respect provincial jurisdictions when it comes to delivering health care. We will, however, continually work in partnership with the provinces to improve outcomes for our seniors. We've seen far too many seniors vulnerable because of the long-term care situations they were in both profit and not-for-profit models. We need to make sure we're protecting all seniors across the country. That's exactly what this federal government will do.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, at the beginning of my career, I was part of the Defence Committee, and we talked a lot about the Honour Operation, which was supposed to allow women to serve proudly in the forces in an inclusive and respectful workplace. Clearly, this operation has failed. Mr. Speaker, what I want to know is when the Prime Minister was made aware of allegations against General Vance. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this government has always taken seriously these types of allegations and will ensure that there is appropriate and independent follow-up. That's exactly what happened here. After the Defence Ombudsman received a complaint, the Minister directed them to the appropriate independent body that could lead an inquiry. We understand that there is still a great deal of work to be done in spite of what has already been done, but we will continue to move forward together on this. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, this government lacks transparency. We never have the right answers, enough cover-ups. The question is clear. When was the Prime Minister made aware of allegations against General Vance? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. For months, I have been answering this question. In the House of Commons, we always take seriously allegations. I was made aware that the Minister of Defence referred the Ombudsman to follow up with appropriate authorities. I only found out about these allegations in news reports in the last months.
Member for Aurora Oak Ridges Richmond Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, under this Prime Minister, sexual misconduct at the highest levels in our Canadian forces continues unchecked. Serious allegations are ignored, investigations are shut down, critical evidence is lost, and charges are dropped. Those who are complicit through their actions or their silence remain in senior positions. This government's consistent failure to act begins and ends with this Prime Minister. What did the Prime Minister know, and when did he know it?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've answered that question a number of times, but we have demonstrated since forming government that we take extraordinarily seriously the responsibility to make sure that people are protected in their places of work, in their service to their country, and that we've brought forward mechanisms and measures that continue to protect them. We recognize there need to be more resources. We recognize there needs to be more work to end a culture that tolerates far too often inappropriate appropriate behavior, we will continue to move faster and stronger on exactly this issue.
Honourable Member for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
This Prime Minister is defiant that he has consistently got it right for the men and women in uniform, but he failed to have General Vance suspended or allegations against him investigated. Or still, he approved a salary increase of $50,000 for him. He approved a replacement Chief of the Defence Staff who also stands accused of sexual misconduct. And he continues to support a Defence Minister who has failed in his sworn duties. When will the Prime Minister hold senior officers accountable, starting with the Defence Minister?
Honourable Prime Minister.
We have no tolerance for any form of sexual misconduct. When such allegations are brought forward, we always take them seriously and forward them to the appropriate authorities. That is exactly what happened in this situation. The Canadian Armed Forces have launched an independent investigation on this matter. In regards to the pay increases, decisions on salary increases are made entirely by professional public servants, and we respond to the recommendations of those public servants.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's cover-up continues. So let's look at the Prime Minister's actual actions. On one hand, the Prime Minister very publicly speculated and directed the RCMP to charge Vice Admiral Mark Norman in March of 2018. But on the other hand, the Prime Minister claims he wouldn't and couldn't politically interfere in starting an investigation into the allegations against General Vance, also in March of 2018. Yesterday, the former military ombudsman called this flimsy political interference excuse.
I'm just going to interrupt the Honourable Member. If I can get him to start over, there seems to be a technical glitch in there, and we're missing parts of the question. We'll give it another shot. The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, let's look at the Prime Minister's actions. On one hand, the Prime Minister very publicly speculated and directed the RCMP to charge Vice Admiral Mark Norman in March of 2018. But on the other hand, the Prime Minister claims he couldn't politically interfere in starting an investigation into the allegations against General Vance, also in March 2018. Yesterday, the former military ombudsman called this flimsy political interference excuse both bizarre and weak. Why did the Prime Minister cover up these allegations?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
As I've said, we always take all allegations of sexual misconduct extremely seriously. No one should ever feel unsafe at work. We will continue to work to change the culture in the Canadian Armed Forces so that no one ever feels like they cannot come forward with allegations of sexual misconduct. Since forming government, we have taken action to address and eliminate sexual harassment, not only in the Canadian Armed Forces, but across government. It is clear, though, that the measures we have taken haven't gone far enough, and we will do more and faster.
Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Some would call that a failure. Mr. Speaker, whether it's Vice Admiral Norman, SNC-Lavalin, the WE scandal, or General Vance, the Liberal playbook is so predictable. First, cover up the issue and pretend to be shocked when it becomes public. Then, throw money at the problem, in this case, a big fat raise for the general accused of sexual misconduct. And finally, when all else fails, blame the Conservative because that defines real Liberal leadership. When will the Prime Minister admit he turned his back on our troops by failing to direct his National Security Advisor to investigate General Vance 3 years ago?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, allegations of sexual misconduct or inappropriate behavior need to be followed up upon by the appropriate authorities, and that is exactly what happened in this case. The ombudsperson was directed towards the right people in terms of following up on an investigation. The ombudsperson was not able to share further information with the investigators, and therefore the investigation did not move forward. We will continue to take very seriously any allegations that come forward, as we always have. We will continue to work to ensure that there is a change in the culture and better systems in place.
The
Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister missed the mark twice. We're going to try again with yes or no in the answer. People are listening closely. Mr. Tremblay is 67 years old. He lives in Rimouski. He wants to know if in the budget there will be an increase in pension for seniors with no discrimination. Not something that's only going to start after age 75. Yes or no, if seniors between 67 and 75 will see increases in their pensions. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the political game that the leader of the Bloc Québécois is playing is disappointing because he knows that we cannot talk about what's in the budget before it is tabled in the House of Commons. I encourage seniors in Rimouski and everywhere throughout Quebec and Canada to be encouraged that we have committed to increasing pensions for seniors after age 75. We have committed to supporting seniors during the pandemic with record investments. We've even increased the GIS by 10% as soon as we took power. We'll continue to support our seniors throughout the country. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, he just said what's in the budget. It's just not the right thing. Imagine once more that we could answer with a yes or a no. The citizens in Outremont are telling us, I want to know if health transfers will be increased unconditionally at the request of every premier by 35%. Let's say the citizen in Outremont wants to know this is called François Legault. Will this be in the budget, yes or no? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. As the member knows full well, I had a very good conversation with Monsieur Legault recently on the issue of supporting healthcare systems in the provinces and the issue of increasing investments or joint investments in things like the manufacturing of green energy, high-speed internet. We will continue to work hand in hand to make sure that Quebecers and Canadians have all the services they need during the pandemic and well after.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, whether it's destroyed documents with the BC Liberals, the gas plant scandal with the McGuinty Liberals, or the SNC-Lavalin scandal with these Liberals, what do they all have in common? Well, it's the senior advisor to the Prime Minister, Ben Chin. That's the same Ben Chin that Craig Kielburger thanked for helping to shape the CSSG in the WE scandal. So is the Prime Minister blocking the testimony of Ben Chin because he has dirt on the Liberal elite from coast to coast to coast?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am stunned that the Conservative opposition continues to talk about the WE charity in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of the concerns that Canadians have about rebuilding our economy in terms of the work that we're doing together. While Conservatives continue to focus on us, continue to focus on politics, we will stay focused on supporting Canadians. We will be focused on the families that need supports, the small businesses that need help across the country, the jobs that will be created through fighting climate change. These are priorities for Liberals the Conservatives don't seem to get at all.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, I agree with the Prime Minister that he is stunned. We also agree that they should be focused as a government on helping Canadians instead of helping insider Liberals. They gave $500 million to a company that gave members of the Prime Minister's family $500,000. They shut down Parliament, locked out committees, filibustered at committees. So the question is very simple. Will the Prime Minister let Ben Chin testify at committee, or is that the only job that he's looking to protect?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as the Conservatives themselves pointed out a number of weeks ago, we are much more focused on supporting Canadians' jobs than we are our own. Our focus from the beginning of this pandemic has been on delivering for Canadians, on supporting families, on supporting small businesses, on helping workers through this pandemic, and yes, on building back better, which involves recognizing that the jobs of the future require us to be responsible about the environment, and we can't have a plan for the future of the economy if we don't have a plan to fight climate change. That, unfortunately, is what the Conservatives are trying to avoid at all costs by bringing up things that, quite frankly, have been answered months and months and months ago.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Well, for this Prime Minister, charity begins at home. his home. In fact, when little children across Canada donated their lunch money and pennies and their allowances to help poor kids in developed countries, somehow hundreds of thousands of dollars of that money ended up with the Prime Minister's family. He paid it back, of course, with a $500 million grant to the We charity. But committee information on how much his family got is now contradictory. In writing, the total is $566,000. But in Kielburger testimony, it's $427,000. How much did his family get?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, while the Conservatives continue to play politics, we will continue to focus on the supports Canadian needs. While Conservative politicians continue to say we did too much too fast to support Canadians, we will continue to say we have your backs. And that's what we've had throughout this pandemic, whether it's direct supports to families, direct supports to workers, supports for the provinces and territories in their rapid testing, in their delivery of safe back to school for kids, or their support for the healthcare systems. We've continued to support Canadians. We've continued to focus on what matters to Canadians rather than Conservatives focusing on what matters to them.
Honourable member for Carleton.
Have Canadians' backs. He has his hands in their back pockets, Mr. Speaker. Now, the question was whether his family got $427,000, as the Kielburgers claim, or $566,000, as the written documents suggest. Either way, it's a lot of dough. Real, serious, true dough. Now, Mr. Speaker, the question we want to find out is what did this money have to do with influencing the Prime Minister's decision to give $500 million to this charity? Will he let his staff, who were involved in setting up this program, testify at the Ethics Committee so that Canadians can know the truth?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Canadians tuning into question period today might be puzzled to wonder why the Conservatives are suddenly going back to failed lines of attack that from many, many months ago. Well, it's all about short-term politics for them. It's all about trying to change a channel in the disastrous convention they just had last weekend. It's all about trying to find something that makes them relevant to Canadians. I recommend that if they want to talk about relevance to Canadians, they talk about how we're going to work together to deliver for families through this pandemic, grow small businesses as we recover our economy, and fight climate change to protect our future.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie.
The Honourable Député.
The Honourable Member. I think we're having a little technical problem here. Sometimes the sound and the video are not properly synced up. So I'm going to ask the member for Rosemont La Petite Patrie to start over. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberals like to present themselves as allies of students, but it's just empty rhetoric. They have not only broken their promise to extend the moratorium on debt repayment, but they've also refused to abolish interest on loans. This is Liberal hypocrisy in action. The NDP has just proposed a plan to help students reduce their student debt. For the Quebec government, this would mean a transfer of hundreds of millions of dollars to help students. When will the Liberals really stand up to help students? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Well, this is a lot of nonsense, Mr. Speaker. We've supported students at every step. We suspended loan repayment. We doubled the Canada Student Loan. We set up the Canada Emergency Benefit for Students, which helped over 700,000 students at the post-secondary level, as well as recent graduates. We will always be there to support our young people who have really suffered during this pandemic and who will help us build back better.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Imagine what it is like being confronted by racial slurs, being spat on, being kicked and punched, and being killed. Racist verbal and physical attacks for Asian Canadians is on a sharp rise. In Vancouver, anti-Asian hate crimes went up 717%. Every attack is aimed at stripping us of our sense of safety and dignity. It is a clear message to say that we are not wanted and we don't belong. Will the Prime Minister stand with us by including anti-Asian racism in the National Anti-Racism racism strategy and all the government's anti-racism policies and programs?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. The rise in anti-Asian hatred and racism that we've seen over the past many months is absolutely horrific. It is unacceptable in Canada or anywhere else around the world. And as a government, as we've moved forward on anti-racism strategies with the Secretariat, with record investments, with support for various communities, we will continue to directly and specifically support Asian Canadians who have seen a horrific rise in hate crimes. It is absolutely unacceptable in Canada that we be seeing this, and I know we all in this House stand united on this issue.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, more than ever, Canadians need access to the internet now to participate in today's digital world. Having made the transition to working from home and taking courses online, people in rural Quebec need reliable connectivity. Can the Prime Minister update Quebecers on the progress being made on this issue? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to thank my colleague, the member for Châteauguay-Lacolle, for her question and her hard work. This week, I was very proud to announce, along with Premier Legault, a joint investment of over $800 million to fund accelerated broadband projects in the province of Quebec. This new investment will enable every Quebecer to be connected to high-speed internet by the end of 2022. We will continue to work in order to get all Canadian households in all regions of Canada connected in the coming years.
Honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, today we learned that vaccine deliveries to Canada from Europe and India, two of the biggest sources of vaccines to our country, may be restricted. 92 countries have written formal exemptions from the EU's export control regulations, but Canada does not. Today, the Minister of Public Procurement declined comment to the Globe and Mail on how proposed restrictions might affect the delivery of EU-made vaccines to Canada. Can the Prime Minister absolutely guarantee that 0 doses of vaccines will be held back from the EU to our country over the next 2 months?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, we share the urgency of all Canadians to ensure access to COVID-19 vaccines. We are concerned with the new reports of restrictions out of the EU, or potential restrictions out of the EU, and we will be continuing to work with our counterparts, including direct contact from me to the highest levels of the European Commission, in order to ensure that Canada's supply of vaccines is not in danger, is not interrupted. This is something that we are working extremely hard on, and we will ensure that Canadians continue to receive the vaccines that we need.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Just blows my mind, Mr. Speaker. We've known this was a problem 2 months ago, and we still have no guarantees from the Prime Minister on that issue. So let's try another country. On top of EU restrictions, India has put a hold on major exports of the AstraZeneca vaccine. Has the Prime Minister contacted the Modi government yet to determine how many doses may be held back by India to our country over the next 2 months? And if so, how many doses may be affected?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on this file as well, we continue to work very closely with officials of both of our countries, ensuring that the promised doses continue to flow. At this point, we have no indications that the 2 million doses we will be receiving from the Serum Institute over the coming 2 months will in any way be affected, and we will continue to ensure that that be the case.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, from the beginning of this crisis, we have been supporting efforts to get Canadians vaccinated if they want to, and that's why we're so concerned today. If you look at what's happening abroad, India just announced that the AstraZeneca vaccine will no longer be exported. A competent Prime Minister would have seen this coming and would have prepared for it. But that's not the case. What does the Prime Minister have to say to the Canadian citizens who received the first dose but don't know when they will be able to get the second dose? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I don't want Canadians to be too worried about what the Prime Minister, about what the member opposite just said. I can reassure them that we will be receiving doses from the Serum Institute in India as promised in the coming months, and we will continue to work with all of our partners around the world to ensure the vaccine doses arrive in Canada as planned. The Conservatives are fear-mongering here, but I think people already have enough to be worried about, and I can reassure people that vaccines will continue to arrive and we will continue to protect them. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the best way to reassure Canadians would be to give them what they're owed. But the Prime Minister didn't do that. In December, he was saying, oh, the vaccines will be here, but in January there were 10 whole days where we didn't receive any vaccines, and they couldn't explain why. Now, India and recently the EU have just announced that they're going to have stricter export controls on vaccines. So beyond all of this rhetoric, what is the Prime Minister's specific plan to reassure Canadians and tell them whether they will be able to get the vaccines that they are expecting, and particularly the second dose? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. You know, we saw this from the Conservatives a month and a half ago when the EU first talked about potential restrictions. They started fear-mongering and saying, oh, Canadians won't be able to get any vaccines, we're all going to be stuck. But we can reassure Canadians that, indeed, we will continue to receive vaccines. And that's exactly what we're doing. We will continue to receive those vaccine doses, and we are working very closely with the Indian government and with the EU leaders to ensure that there is no interruption in the arrival of those vaccines. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, on January 27th, the House of Commons unanimously called on the Minister of Immigration to grant citizenship to Raif Badawi. 2 months later, nothing has happened. Mr. Badawi is still imprisoned in Saudi Arabia, and he is still not a citizen. The Minister of Immigration has the legal authority to act, and he could do so right now. But after 2 months, and after I questioned him yesterday and the day before, he was unable to explain the reasons for his inaction. So I have to wonder, is it the Prime Minister who is asking him to defy the will of the House? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for years we have been working on the Raif Badawi case. I myself have spoken directly to the Prince and the King to ensure that they take our concerns seriously when it comes to his detention and security. All Canadians want Mr. Badawi to be reunited with his family, and we are continuing to support them in every way possible. We are working on this issue, and we are continuing to work with it at the highest level. We will continue to work with all parliamentarians and to find every method possible to reunite Mr. Badawi with his family. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, once again, the House's request to grant citizenship to Raif Badawi was unanimous. Unanimous meaning it was supported by the Prime Minister as well. So let me recap, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Badawi's family and his lawyer are asking that he be granted citizenship. The House of Commons unanimously agrees. The Minister of Immigration agrees. The Prime Minister agrees. So, if everyone agrees, why, 2 months later, is Mr. Badawi still not a citizen? What's going on, Mr. Speaker? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in cases like this one, we always try to do things that will help. We're trying to get Mr. Badawi reunited with his family. That's always our priority. We are aware of the will of his family and of this House, and we will do everything that we can to reunite Mr. Badawi with his family, including having conversations at the highest level in order to underscore Canadians' desire to see this happen.
Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, documents released last week by Global Affairs paint a troubling picture of the naivete of this government in foreign policy. After a bit of pressure was put on the government by the arms export lobby and by Turkish authorities, and after the government was told that these arms exports would be used for the defense of human rights, the government buckled and naively reversed its earlier decision and approved these arms exports to Turkey. Will the Prime Minister now admit that this was a mistake?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when reports first came out about the possible utilization of Canadian technology in unsanctioned areas, we suspended the relevant export permits to Turkey because we take very seriously the responsibilities we have under some of the most restricted and constraining regulations in the world around arms exports. We will continue to push for proper accountability and transparency in arms exports. exports, a system that was left in very shoddy state after 10 years of Conservative government, that we were able to tighten up, and we will continue to ensure that we have full accountability and full transparency, including from our NATO allies like Turkey.
Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the documents also reveal something else troubling. The Liberal Party put its own self-interest first. The documents reveal that when the foreign minister met with his Turkish counterpart last September, the objective wasn't to discuss the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict. It wasn't to discuss Syria or other regional conflicts. It was to promote the Liberal Party and Liberal insiders. It was to promote Bill Morneau's candidacy for the OECD. 19 staff were put on this job. Does the Prime Minister think it appropriate to put the Liberal Party's interest ahead of that of Canada's?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the tradition of Canadian leadership in multilateral institutions around the world is one that Canadians of all political stripes have supported over the past many decades. It has been important to have Canadians serving in the highest instances of multilateral institutions to ensure to advance our values and our interests, to demonstrate the competence and the commitment of Canada to shared global values and the rule of law, and the growth of the economy in ways that, for example, recognizes that climate change is an economic challenge that we all need to address together.
Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, in light of these revelations, will the Prime Minister commit to not repeating the mistakes that helped fuel the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and that were contrary to Canada's interests and values in the region? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I can say that in my conversations with the Prime Minister of Armenia during this conflict, but also throughout the many conversations that we had, including several years ago, I stated that we would always be there with our brothers and sisters in Armenia. We recognize the challenges that they are facing as a country, and we will always support them, because this is a country with whom we have shared values and strong ties.
Honourable Member for Markham-Stouffville.
Mr. Speaker, it was deeply troubling to hear the Conservative Party of Canada reject adding climate change is real to their policy book this past weekend. Whether we're talking about measures to get through this pandemic or addressing the serious issue of climate change, facts and science matter. Can the Prime Minister please update this House and all Canadians on the importance of the environment when it comes to growing our economy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I'd like to thank the member from Markham-Stouffville for her question and for her long-standing dedication to public health. Unlike the Conservative members opposite, on this side of the House, the debate is truly settled. Climate change is real. And unlike the party opposite, we, along with Canadians, investors, industry, and economists, recognize that a plan for jobs and growth must include a plan for the environment. Mr. Speaker, it is a simple fact, one almost all Canadians recognize. Unfortunately, the Conservative Leaders' Party has once again chosen to reject that.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Centre.
Mr. Speaker, last week Chevron Canada announced that it is exiting the Kitimat LNG project after 7 years and $3 billion. Why is investment fleeing this world-leading project? Well, the Liberal appointee leading the Canada Infrastructure Bank said that risk and uncertainty are holding back private investment projects across the country. It comes full circle, Mr. Speaker. Liberals create risk and uncertainty and then blame investment fleeing Canada on risk and uncertainty. Can the Prime Minister please tell 4,500 more Canadian workers why their jobs are suddenly more risky and uncertain?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Global investors understand that climate change is real. The risk in their investments is often that there are mainstream parties in Canada, like the Conservative Party of Canada, that does not accept that climate change is real and that we need to act. There are provinces across this country that continue to fight against the simple fact of putting a price on pollution as a way of moving forward to fight climate change and create good jobs. The resistance to understanding that climate change is real is the economic risk that all Canadians and investors face because of Conservative parties.
I want to remind the honourable members not to turn on their microphones or keep them off if they're not asking you a question. It interrupts the flow of things. The honourable member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock.
Well, Speaker, I look forward to the day when the Prime Minister finally recognizes that reducing emissions is more than just increasing taxes and virtue signaling. Speaker, we have a real plan. This project, Kitimat LNG, will reduce 40 million tons a year, Speaker, while at the same time displacing the influence of the bad actors right across the world. Not only that, capital is fleeing Canada, Speaker. We're seeing that Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities are being hurt right across this country. In fact, 16 First Nations had secured over $500 million in commercial partnership agreements. When will the Prime Minister finally get serious about reconciliation?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Indigenous communities across this country have long understood that in order to have healthy communities, one must protect the environment. Canadians across the country understand that in order to create jobs and growth, we need to fight climate change at the same time. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party continues to misunderstand and not realize that the only way to move forward with a plan for jobs and growth for the economy is to also have a plan to fight climate change. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to do what is necessary to fight climate change while creating growth right across the country.
Honourable member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock.
Maybe the Prime Minister could also update us on his $2 billion tree promise. Also, Speaker, the Prime Minister talks a good game about supporting reconciliation, yet Indigenous families, businesses and communities are all being deprived by these Liberals. 16 First Nations communities have lost those agreements in training, employment, contracting, environmental stewardship, and many more. Indigenous people want certainty, they want opportunity. Instead, $35 billion has exited the country over the past 5 years. Liberal policies are hindering reconciliation, so when will the Prime Minister stand up for Indigenous communities and secure their future?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have continued to work with Indigenous communities across the country on creating economic investments and opportunities, while at the same time investing in ending long-term drinking water advisories, in opening new schools, in creating opportunities for investments and partnerships. We have demonstrated that reconciliation goes a lot further than just trying to get them on board for a specific energy project that the Conservatives seem to want. It has to do with creating opportunities for growth long-term, while at the same time fighting climate change and protecting the planet, and that is what this Liberal government consistently does.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil Charlemagne. Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Conservative Party of Canada chose not to add climate change is real to their policy book. This is not a solution to climate change, and it will even make things worse, whether we're talking about a pandemic times or others. So can the Prime Minister explain why it's so important to take action against climate change? Thank you. Right Honourable Prime Minister, I want to thank the member for Longueuil Charlemagne for this important question. Perhaps the members across the way should spend less time asking questions about science and talking to people in Lac-Saint-Jean who are seeing more and more forest fires, or people in the Montérégie and the Outaouais region who have seen 2 historic floods in the last 2 years, or any other Canadian who knows that climate change is real because they feel its effects every day. Mr. Speaker, when the Conservatives refuse to acknowledge reality, Canadians can have confidence that our government will continue to take real action on climate change for future generations.
Honourable Member for Skeena Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Parliamentary Budget Officer slammed this government's infrastructure bank on its failure to get things built. He found that after 4 years, the bank has finalized investment in only 2 projects and spent only 3% of its budget. And the billions of dollars of private funding the Prime Minister promised, not a single cent has arrived. This government's privatization agenda has left communities without desperately needed projects. Will the Prime Minister finally stop trying to help his corporate friends turn a profit and instead focus on the needs of communities?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can understand that Skeena-Bulkley Valley is a long way from my hometown of Montreal, but I can tell you the Montrealers see every day the construction going on with the REM, the electric transit system that is making a huge difference in Montreal already as it is being built. The Infrastructure Bank was a key partner in that, and we continue to invest in key projects right across the country. We know that investing in public transit, investing in infrastructure is the way to create jobs now and opportunities for the future. We will continue to deliver for Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
And that's all the time we have today. Rising on a point of order, l'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think that there is unanimous consent for tabling of the following document, an email from Danielle Jean about the Minister of National Defence, and since the Leader of the Official Opposition mentioned it, I'm sure that all parliamentarians will be pleased to be able to read it when I table it. All those opposed to what the Honourable Member is proposing will say nay.
D'accord. Ah.
Okay, no.
Nous avons
We do not have the unanimous consent.
Nous avons aussi.
We also have the Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to remind you that health protection standards are very important in the chamber, and we always have to have 2 meters distance from the other individuals. I see that there are 3 members of the executive in the House today. We must respect the 2-meter distance. Yes, we must always respect the 2-meter distance, but we must not refer to the presence of members in the House. I know that the Honourable Member knows that full well.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Mr. Speaker, there's been discussion amongst the parties, and if you seek it, I hope you'll find unanimous consent with the following motion: that in addition to the measures in the motion adopted on March 22nd, 2021, condemning the rise of anti-Asian racism, in the opinion of the House, that the government should also include anti-Asian racism in Canada's anti-racism strategy 2019 to 2020 and all anti-racism policies and programs.
All those opposed to the Honourable Member moving the motion will please say nay. Agreed? The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Carried. L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Richmond North Athabasca on a point of order. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I would like to talk about the government's written response to a question submitted on February 1st of this year. The question was the following one: with regard to illegal firearms in Canada, how much does the government estimate? How many guns have come in to the country since 2016, broken down by year? And with regards to the different means of transportation. Also, with regard to supporting information, the link was not a government source, but it was tied to a non-government organization called Open Parliament. The publication was in English. In the French version of the government's response signed by the member for Louis Hébert, the same link was given and sent the Francophone reader to an English site. The English one was provided in the signed response by the member for Louis Hébert, was tabled in the House on 22nd of March and printed on in the Hansard. We can read. The interpreter apologizes, but the speaker is breaking up, and interpretation will resume when the interpreter can hear.
De plus, toutes les publications du Parlement.
I must interrupt the member. I will interrupt the honourable member. Can he perhaps move back, start back some 15 seconds prior, because there were technical issues and there was no interpretation. There is a delay between the video and the sound, so I would perhaps ask the honourable member to go back about a paragraph in his speech and then continue. With pleasure, Mr. Speaker. With pleasure, Mr. Speaker. So I will go back about a paragraph and a half. So the response gave what the government thought was supporting information through a hyperlink. The hyperlink was not a government source, but was lied to a non-government entity called Open Parliament. This publication was in English. In the French version of the government's response, signed by the member for Louis Hébert, the same link was provided, and it sent the Francophone reader to the English text. This English link was provided in the signed response by the Liberal member for Louis Hébert, tabled in the House on Monday, March 22nd, and printed on page 553 of the Hansard. We can read what follows on 612 of Bosque and Gagnon. The Constitutional Act 1867 guarantees that MPs can address the House in French or in English. Furthermore, all publications of the Parliament, like journals, debates, the order paper, and the notice paper, are printed in both official languages. We can also read on page 615, all documents tabled in the House by a minister must be so in both official languages. I would also send you to the Official Languages Act. French and English are the official languages of the Parliament. Everyone can use either in the debates and deliberations of Parliament, and the accounts and publications contain the publications in one official language and the translation in the other official language. Mr. Speaker, I think it's very important to say this, particularly because we can see all the shortcomings that occurred in protecting the French language with regard to this government. On April 19th, 1983, the Speaker said provisions are the most categorical form of instructions given by the House. In my opinion, again, the interpreter must interrupt.
Constitue un affront à l'autorité et à la dignité du Parlement.
The sound quality is not sufficient to allow for interpretation.
Député libéral de Louis Hébert.
Est-ce que je peux interrompre?
I must interrupt the member. Once again, we have some technical issues.
The islands?
I've been listening attentively, Mr. Speaker. The interpreter said that they had to stop because of technical.
Okay. L'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, on this point of order, which is quite relevant and important, I would invite my colleague from Richmond Arthabaska to repeat at least the last minute of what he has indicated, because these are important issues. Here we speak both official languages. We must allow the interpreters to hear properly the comments being made. I invite the member for Richmond Arthabaska to go back and repeat the final minute of what he has said. When did we see?
Interpretation, is it about a minute, or I just want to make sure that we don't miss anything? About a couple of paragraphs, or
As soon as the interpreter made that comment, I stood up. So it was only a matter of 5-10 seconds, Mr. Speaker. But I think the important thing here is that the technical issue be resolved so that we can continue to hear this in its entirety. Otherwise, we'll continue to have this problem.
Yes, we are aware of it, and I've spoken with the technical folks. They're looking into it to see what happened. There's a delay between video and voice, and it seems to be central to our problem throughout the question period today. But thank you for bringing that up. L'honorable député de Richmond.
The honourable member for Richmond Arthabaska, if he could repeat the paragraph and a half ahead, and then, or the previous paragraph and a half, and then we can all have a good idea of what is being said. Please continue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'll confirm that my internet connection is good. I rechecked. My connection's excellent right now, so I don't believe that my computer is the problem. Let me go back by one paragraph. Section 4 of the Official Languages Act indicates that English and French are the official languages of Parliament, and they can be used in debates and work at Parliament. Summaries of this work includes transcriptions of what is said in official languages and translation into the other official languages. On April 19th, 1993, there was a response to a question of privilege by a speaker, and it indicated that the legislative measures are the most categoric instruction of the House. Violating this instruction, whether it's involuntary or not, represents a violation of the authority of Parliament in general and of the House of Commons specifically. I do not know why the Liberal member for Louis-Hébert did not respect the French language in this case. We don't know if it was intentional or if it was simply negligence. However, I believe that, like I have discovered, that there are several problems with this government when it comes to respecting the French language, especially during the pandemic. The Official Languages Commissioner highlighted it not long ago in a report. The complete response to this issue by the government must be submitted in both official languages as required by our Constitution, our rules, our customs, and our laws. Thank you. I would like to thank the honourable member. I will take note of it and come back to the House if necessary. We have another point of order. The honourable member for Louis-Hébert. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to respond to my colleague briefly to reassure him that this error was far from intentional, and I will make sure that it is corrected as quickly as possible to ensure the respect of official languages, particularly French. It is primordial, and that's one of the reasons I decided to get involved with the Liberal Party and not the Conservative Party, which systematically seems to prefer a unilingual system. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We did have a brief problem. Could you please repeat the last sentences, please?
Avec grand plaisir, monsieur.
With pleasure, Mr. Speaker. I was just saying that official languages, especially French, is important to me, and that's why I decided to become part of the Liberal Party and not the Conservative Party. The Conservatives for 10 years, under Stephen Harper, systematically appointed unilingual Anglophone representatives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the members for their speeches.
Maintenant, nous allons continuer.
We will now proceed.
Comme il est 15h25.
As it is 3:25, pursuant to order made in this House, January 25th, 2021, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion at second reading stage of Bill C-232 under private members' business. Call in the members. As this is the first recorded division to be taken on an item of private member's business since the adoption of the order of March 22nd, 2021, I would like to take this opportunity to explain the new procedure.
Is requested on an item of a private member's business. The table officer will first call the sponsor of the item in question, regardless of whether the member is participating in person or by video conference. Si le député participe par vidéoconférence, il votera selon.
If the member is participating by video conference, they will vote according to the practice in place prior to the launch of the electronic voting system, meaning when their